Hello, this is Jamie of the Druid Diaries. I just used a beautiful smudge and I have also just brewed two lovely medicinal teas. One of them is thyme, garden thyme, very simple, beautiful plant. I wish everyone would get to know and appreciate more. It was used commonly by the Roman legion as a tonic. It has been gifted in sachets for people to carry as protection. And it is a beautiful, beautiful smudge that has been used during grieving, periods of grieving and wakes. So all three of these things are great blessings from the plant thyme. I have grown thyme. It is a gorgeous looking plant. And if you've ever worked with plants, occasionally plants will give bursts of scent out to you when you're interacting with them. You don't want to be too rough with them, always being respectful. I was transplanting this beautiful thyme plant from a pot to the ground, and it did that, and it just gave me this gorgeous, piney, rich flare up that was very clarifying. It was a gift. It felt wonderful to be bathed in that. It's as if the plant blessed me. Now, other people might interpret it as, oh, just leave me alone, human. You know, what the heck do you think you're doing? And that's fine too, but it was received and felt in a very positive way. I have watered plants, and they have given forth that beautiful burst to me, and it's like a thank you. Right or wrong, I received it that way, and I appreciated it. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my use of thyme. I do put it on my altar as a fresh cut plant. It blesses the altar with its grace, beauty and medicine. It dries there, and then I use that now blessed time, blessed from spending its time on the altar and going through all the prayers, the rituals that I may have done during that time that it was drying. And now it's going to go into my pot of water for a medicinal tea, for me, a tonic. I've been very, very tired, and there's a lot of people sick around me, really wickedly bad colds, like sore throats. So I was staring at my table, and I had this fresh thyme out there on the table, and another tea, which I'm very unfamiliar with. It comes from Greece, mountain tea. It's a new tea to me. It's a new plant, and I'm just getting to know it, and it's been sitting there, and I'm not too sure what to do with you, and it just came to me, use these two together right now. And I haven't blended the two teas. I'm going to begin by having them separately within the space of a few hours. I think that's always good to be cautious and separate your plants, your herbs. I am not an herbalist. I have been taught by some indigenous elders a small number of plants. I did have a beautiful encounter with plants, well, more than one encounter with plants when I was really young, that was showing me that they were medicines. The plant that I first really distinguished as a medicine, I was a very little girl, and it grew between the cracks in the sidewalk. And years later, a teaching came to me through an indigenous elder that was a medicine that his adopted grandmother had blessed him to use. So that's exciting. And my intuitions, my deep feelings about that plant were confirmed. And that was really important to me. He gave me quite a beautiful gift by sharing that with me, and then saying that I could then use this medicine. And indeed, it is a wonderful medicine, especially for stomach flu, which is one of my dreaded experiences. I really don't throw up well. Now back to the thyme tea. I've been talking about time tea to people, and I have had some feedback. One lady was saying her mother drank it for years and lived to be a ripe old age. Now, those are little anecdotal stories, and they have no scientific proof. And even in a kind of experiential way, one or two anecdotes really doesn't do it. I think in the end, you have to strive to do as much research as you can that is science-based, as much research as you can with actual traditional herbalists, people like Susan Weed, who I am so respectful of. She is an inspiration. She is a font of knowledge, and just, I watch her videos, and gosh, she's great. She's got a great humble way about her, very down to earth, and I love people like that. So appreciation to Susan Weed. So the time tea, I also did some research on the lore, and I'm not going to share it with you. I have it in my playlist. So on Herbs, A Deeper Knowledge, there's some really, really good videos in there, and wonderful people, really knowledgeable herbalists. And some of the lore aspect, though, I have researched online in written form, so it won't be there. And perhaps at a later date, when I have more time, I will do a video combining all these things. But there are some people that I have included in that playlist that have done both, and that is the best kind of presentation, I think, for those of us that are studying the ovate aspects of Druidry. It's very, very useful and beautiful. So I am going to have some of this gorgeous time tea first, and I will, in a couple of hours, have some mountain tea. Now, I have often used an intuitive approach to my health. It has done me a lot of good to do so too. And I think that it's important to look at the potential of your body to speak to your conscious mind through dreams, through intuition, just a feeling, a sensation, maybe the smell of a plant. It really grips you. Find out what that plant's about. Don't just eat it. There might be a trick. Plants have ways of tricking beings into being fertilizer. Plants can lure animals, and some varieties have sprayed poison, and that animal dies and becomes food for that plant. That's not in Canada, but there are invasive species like hogweed that are very, very dangerous to touch, but they're a bit like kelpies. They're gorgeous, they're impressive, really beautiful plants that might draw you in. You just got maybe touch that plant, and then you really are in trouble. So know your plants, study them. I'm not a memorizer. I like to get outside and meet the plants, be with them, walk around, stop, talk to them, listen, look. It's the same thing with the trees. Absolutely love getting close to the trees. And here where we live, you got to watch out for ticks. And another concern is Lyme disease coming from the ticks. So everything being connected. I was reading recently about fats, and fats helping to protect our skin. And these fats would be animal fats, really healthy omega-3 fats from hemp and avocado, things like that. I have mentioned in a previous video done this weekend that I'm following the keto diet, and have come full circle from at one time becoming a vegetarian, then a vegan, a wild meat eater, and then eating meat again, and finding myself in a position that, I'm just glad to have food on my plate and striving to make healthy choices. Organic whenever possible, permaculture even better. I love permaculture. It's such a wonderful philosophy. It's healing for the earth. It's healing for us humans too, permaculture. And I think it's very harmonious with being a druid to be involved in these kinds of very holistic, healthy earth practices to sustain ourselves, whether we're meat eaters, vegans, or vegetarians. So do look into those things. And something as simple as garden thyme, which is an exquisite plant, absolutely gorgeous little plant, can be purchased in a grocery store. Fresh, doesn't even have to be dried. Go look at that. You might find it in a cooler. Now, I really dislike having to deal with petroleum plastic all the time, so the time that I often purchase, especially during the winter, I know there was a seasonal bloop there. It is in a little plastic container, but I recycle that plastic container. And the other thing is that after growing time, I found that it keeps quite fresh over the winter, even with the snow. Its little leaves are real survivors. It doesn't lose everything. I know and recognize that there's a point after the autumnal equinox that it's not good to be picking anything. And whatever is there, let's say it's chokecherries or buffalo berries, that's there for the wild animals, for the birds, for the deer. They've got to have something to eat too, and we can't be at that all the time, and it's best for us to pick it before and dry it. That's the most natural way of preserving, is drying things. Then with meats and things that can be smoked ham, smoked salmon. Oof, it's fantastic. Schwank. I am trying my best in the situation that I'm in, which is a modest one, to be mindful of the plants that I use seasonally. So I have accumulated thyme, and even though I can get it in the fridge at the store in the winter, I prefer to have accumulated my little stash over the summer, spring, summer, fall, and let it dry and use it from my dried supply. I'm not going to really judge people harshly for going, say, to get some rosemary, fresh rosemary for their altar at the winter equinox, if they have an altar, or for use in an emergency. I don't think anyone should deny themselves access to something if there's something really rough going on and you really feel the need, let's say, to add a rosemary or a thyme to a medicinal tea, or to create a smudge from it. I would err on the side of compassion and go with what's needed at that moment. But I do strive to hold myself to a higher standard. I prefer to pick wild plants or cultivate my own herbs. I feel that both are very good to do, and there's nothing wrong with cultivated plants. I think it's a lot about how you do things. And again, and I say this over and over again, because I really I have a disdain for people who are too rigid. Sorry. But I think it's the absoluteness of many things is not the point. You look deeper and you look to the purpose of why you do something. You strive to learn those things. What's the purpose behind doing something a certain way? And if the answer is, well, we've just always done it that way, stop, think, research. Strive to find out, whether it's researching online, researching in books, whether it is your own dream work. I am still a firm believer that at least some of us are gifted with those qualities that our ancestors had, and we shouldn't give up on that and just brush it off because it's not such a scientific method. I have had really profound experiences with my dreams from childhood. There are times that I more intentionally cultivate that, and times, periods of my life, where I have not. Now I'm beginning to enter a time of my life where I am starting to cultivate that again. And that makes me feel wonderful because it's part of my nature to function in that way. And by denying it and pushing it back, that hasn't been healthy for me. So getting back to that is a cheerful thing. It's a happy thing. And I have used some mugwort smudges for that. When I smudge at night, I smudge myself down with the mugwort and I smudge my area. Mugwort's a beautiful, again, another beautiful, beautiful plant. And it's important to acknowledge these plants that we use. Show them respect. Commune with these plants at some level that's comfortable for you. There is a conversation to be had between us and these other lives. Now, granted, by the time I've got this mugwort, it's long been picked from the living root of the plant and it's been dried. And I'm very grateful that someone has gone through that process for me. And I feel confident that the source of that mugwort is ethical and good, and that the mugwort is healthy and safe to use. Sprayed plants are not really something you want to be using, so be careful of your sources if it's not something you have grown or picked yourself. And when you pick things, be aware of where you're picking them. I was with a friend on a plant walk. We go on plant walks, some of us. I seem to be, at the moment, the one spearheading this, and different people come with me or I go by myself. But in this instance, we were by the side of a road and we were by a field of grain. And there was a moment there after looking at these beautiful plants, a wide variety of plants in the gully, looking up and looking at that grain field. And the uniformity of those plants was positively unnatural. That just wasn't, that isn't how plants are. Even grain has more variety than that field had. And it was a very peculiar moment of realization that that was genetically modified, that they were cloned in some way, possibly. It was very odd. So my thought was immediately, oh dear, how has that affected the plants in this little ditch that we've been following along the road? Face value, didn't look like it had affected them at all, but I wasn't about to pick for smudge in that area. We do know that GMO plants are affecting the plants that invade the fields. They are entering the body of the plant and affecting its makeup. So plants, again, they communicate to one another, maybe not the way we're having a conversation, but they influence one another, they adapt, and plants live in communities, and having uniform fields is not the normal kind of pattern for the plants that are in this area, that's for sure. So you look at all those things and you become aware, and then you do the research. And when we talk about things like this, know that there's a lot more behind what I'm saying than what I'm saying. I'm just, creating a little doorway to a thought, to an idea, to some deeper knowledge here in conversation. So please look twice at those herbs in the grocery store. Appreciate that they are medicines. Even some of the foods that are now cultivated are way back our friends, like broccoli. Broccoli was grown more as a medicinal plant at one time. The dandelion teeth, those leaves are the teeth of the lion, and the yellow head, its beautiful thick mane. The dandelion was brought to North America, and the settlers from Europe tried to contain it. And of course, dandelions being dandelions, It parachuted out of its containment and spread right across North America. But that incredible, voracious, tenacious, sunny individual, every bit of it is good. Every single bit of it. The roots, the leaves, the stem can be used, the head of the dandelion. Everything in that plant is goodness, and yet it's so hated. Doesn't that make you wonder? I haven't used any kind of chemicals on my tiny little patch out the back of our home here. And I go out and I pick those leaves. I say, grow, you. It's great. Throw them in my stir fries. I can use them as salad. I haven't pulled any roots if I haven't felt the need to use the roots as tea, because I don't honestly have many dandelions out back, because I've allowed my grass to seed itself. And when you allow grass to seed itself and overseed, it pushes other plants out. It will accept other varieties of grass, but the dandelions move on because they're tough and they find their own space, and they're great. Same with thistles. Those are the plants that will grow in that really tough ground, and they bring life to it. So I'm meandering a bit, but I just want to say a bit about how much I appreciate having access to some of these plants. Well, all of them. They're incredible. And I want to say also how much I've enjoyed doing research on them and finding out things like I did about the Roman Legion, cherishing their little gifts of sachets of thyme. And given that we all experience various forms of grief, thyme is one that I really want to recommend as a smudge. Being someone that has had Indigenous Canadian teachers and who is a practitioner of Druidry and a student of Druidry and a hedge Druid, that's how I self-identify. You can argue it. I have come across a lot of mixed reviews on non-natives being involved with Indigenous spirituality here on Turtle Island. I have a really deep respect for the elders here and for the ceremonies and the sweat lodge. I am well aware that I am not native. I even had my DNA tested, and there's not a drip, a drab, not a speck of Indigenous bloodline in me personally. There is in family members, but not for me. So, and that's actually kind of amusing, because I have had individuals in the community try to call me out saying that I was part native, and I was like, nope, make it easier, but no, I'm not. So with love and respect, I say that it was a privilege, and if whatever my experiences are in future, it is always a privilege for non-natives to be involved with any kind of Indigenous spiritual rituals, ceremonies, circles, talking circles, social events like the powwow. I think it's wonderful, and sharing can be caring, and every gift that I have been blessed with from the community, I am forever grateful for. And I just want everyone to know that. And we're all human beings. You can't expect to get along with every single person you come across, and you can't expect every single person to agree with you being there. But I will say that when I was on this journey more intensely in the beginning, because I couldn't access Druid teachers, people in Druidry, it was not accessible for me. I'm over 60 years old. And when I was first interested in Druidry, I was very young, and that just wasn't happening. My parents had a little book that they purchased because they had been to Stonehenge. I was like, great, lucky you. Do I get to go now? Nope. So I had a long, long wait before Druidry became something, more fully formal. And I asked, I put it out there to the universe, please, I don't have my teachers that I would have when, we were the ancient people of of Britain, of Scotland, of Albion, of Ireland. It just, they're not here for me and I need them. I really, really wish they were here for me. And maybe they were in spirit because I was guided into the Indigenous community. And I really feel that most of what I received of teachings within the community relates really powerfully to Druidry. And if that is because Indigenous spirituality has informed the development of modern Druidry, okay, that's a reasonable explanation. I think it's more because it's earth-based and there's a certain universality that runs throughout all earth-based spirituality. There's certainly going to be differences, but there are so many, from Clutes to the offerings on the Sundance pole, the tree. You wonder. You really have to wonder. And I also, see that plants, we have mistletoe in the mountains of Alberta, and we have mistletoe in Britain. It doesn't look the same, but they are both the same family. We have eagles here in Canada, golden eagles. We have the beautiful eagles in Scotland. We have the bear. We share the bear. We share the salmon. It's much more universal than people realize. And the more that we learn, all of us, the more we'll understand how we are so deeply, deeply connected in this earth-based spirituality. Now, there are differences. And I found those differences all right across the country as I met different elders. And there certainly are differences in Druidry. But I feel I found my home in Druidry. I feel that elders and the spirits of this land where I was born have helped me in my journey, comforted me for the most part. It wasn't all easy by a long shot. There were some really hard moments. But with gratitude, I say, they helped me come home to my own Indigenous belief systems. And one thing that was said to me is really, really important for people that like to judge a little quickly. I sundanced, and I didn't think that that was something I would ever do. I was told by someone, a non-native young man, that he dreamt that I would have something to do with the Sundance. And someone else, an elder, alluded to something with the Sundance before I came out to Western Canada. And it was the leader of a Sundance that turned to me and said, "What would you say if I told you that you were going to Sundance?" I was really taken aback because I came to ask him, I wanted to ask him about Vision Quest. The reason I wanted to go on a Vision Quest is to go and ask the Creator, the gods, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, the spirits, the land, if I could be gifted with some kind of ceremony for all women. I never did that Vision Quest. I sundanced for 9 years. So I don't know what kind of answer that really was. I may be pondering that for the rest of my life. But I cherished that. I became a pipe carrier, and what I was told, you're not appropriating my heritage. This is your heritage too. And you have come home to that. And what I understand that very, very clearly to be now is about the sacred sun, the deity of our sun. Our ancestors, my ancestors, many of your ancestors also worshiped the sun as a deity, respected the sun as a living being. And so that was a great, great gift for me to be reunited with the sun. It was through an indigenous North American ceremony, I don't think that's the point. It was coming home. Just like the medicines. In ancient times, our ancestors, we knew the goddess of the moon, and we knew the deity of the sun, and then later human types of deities related to the sun. On that we can all unite. So the time has come for me to have my beautiful time tea. You have an awesome evening. Bye-bye.